The bedside clock in my Denver hotel room glowed 11:47 when my laptop chimed with an incoming video call. My heart warmed seeing my husband's name flash across the screen, Dorian. 5 days away from home felt like forever, and his face was exactly what I needed before sleep found me. I straightened the silk scarf around my neck, the one he'd brought me from our anniversary trip to Sedona, and clicked accept with eager fingers that trembled slightly from exhaustion and longing. "Hey there, beautiful," Dorian's voice poured through the speakers like honey, smooth and familiar. His salt and pepper hair was slightly messy, falling across his forehead the way it always did when he'd been working in his home office late into the evening. "How's the pharmaceutical conference treating you, Maribel?" he asked, his smile reaching those green eyes I'd fallen in love with 28 years ago. I settled deeper into the hotel pillows, cradling my laptop closer, drinking in the sight of our bedroom behind him, the burgundy curtains, the antique dresser, our wedding photo on the nightstand. "Exhausting but productive," I said, forcing brightness into my voice despite the bone-deep weariness. "Dr. Chen's presentation on cardiac medications was fascinating, though I kept wishing you were there to discuss it with me afterward." I noticed he was wearing the navy sweater I'd given him last Christmas, the one that made his eyes look impossibly green. "I miss you terribly, Dorian. This is the longest we've been apart since your mother's funeral 3 years ago." The words caught in my throat, emotion threatening to spill over into tears I didn't want him to see. He leaned closer to his camera, and for a moment, everything felt perfect and normal and right. "I miss you too, sweetheart. The house feels too empty without you here. I've been eating cereal for dinner and staying up too late working on that proposal for the architecture firm." His laugh was soft, self-deprecating, exactly the sound that had made me fall for him decades ago when we were both young and hungry and building our lives from nothing. "Only 2 more days until you're home, right? I'm counting down the hours." Then I saw it. My breath caught in my chest like a trapped bird, wings beating frantically against my ribs. Behind Dorian, on my side of the bed, the side I'd slept on for 28 years, was a silver handbag. Not mine. I didn't own anything silver or that expensive looking, with delicate chain straps that caught the lamplight and gleamed like accusations. My mind raced, trying to rationalize, trying to find innocent explanations that dissolved like sugar in rain the moment they formed. "Dorian," I started carefully, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. "Is that a handbag on my side of the bed?" I watched his eyes flicker, just for a microsecond, toward the background. His expression shifted, barely noticeable to anyone who hadn't spent nearly 3 decades learning every nuance of his face. Panic, then calculation, then something that looked horrifyingly like resignation flashed across his features before he managed to school them back into casual confusion. "What? Oh, that must be, hold on, I think I heard something downstairs." He stood abruptly, his movement jarring and unnatural, nothing like the relaxed husband who'd been talking to me seconds ago. "Let me go check." Probably just the wind rattling the back door. "You know how it gets this time of year." "I'll call you right back, sweetheart, just give me a minute." The screen went black before I could respond, before I could ask why he needed to check downstairs when he'd just been sitting comfortably in our bedroom, before I could demand the truth that was already crystallizing in my gut like poison. I sat frozen in the hotel room silence, staring at my reflection in the blank laptop screen. The woman looking back at me seemed suddenly older, the lines around her eyes deeper, her 53 years written plainly across her face. My hands were shaking now, really shaking, as I opened my phone and began searching for the earliest flight home. Whatever was happening in my house, in my marriage, in my life, I was done waiting 2 more days to find out the truth. What did Maribel just discover? Drop your theories in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see what happens when she comes home early. This story is just getting started. Fire. I didn't sleep that night. Not one single minute. I sat on that hotel bed with my laptop open, refreshing my email, waiting for Dorian to call back like he'd promised. He never did. Every hour that passed without contact felt like another brick added to the wall of evidence building in my mind. At 2:17 in the morning, I finally stopped lying to myself about innocent explanations and started facing the ugly truth that was staring me in the face. By 3:30, I'd booked the earliest flight out, 6:15 from Denver International. I methodically packed my suitcase, folding my conference clothes with automatic precision while my mind ran through everything I thought I knew about my marriage. Had there been signs I'd missed? Late nights at the office that seemed to multiply over the past year? The way he'd stopped asking me detailed questions about my pharmaceutical sales trips? How he'd suggested I take this Denver conference even though he knew I hated traveling alone? I called my closest friend, Teslyn Morehouse, at 4 in the morning. She answered on the second ring, her voice alert despite the hour. "Maribel? What's wrong?" Tess had been my confidant since nursing school 30 years ago, back when we were both broke students surviving on ramen and ambition. I saw something on a video call with Dorian. A woman's handbag. On my side of the bed. The words felt like glass in my throat. Tess was silent for 3 long seconds, and in that silence, I heard everything she wasn't saying, the confirmation, the anger, the heartbreak on my behalf. "Come straight to my house from the airport," Tess said firmly, her voice shifting into the take-charge tone she used in the emergency room where she worked. "Don't go home yet. We need a plan, Maribel. You can't just walk in there unprepared, not after almost 30 years of marriage. You need witnesses, you need documentation, you need to protect yourself legally and emotionally." She paused, and I heard her moving around, probably already making coffee, already shifting into warrior mode for me. "I'm calling Lowell. My brother's a divorce attorney, remember? He'll know what you should do." The airport was nearly empty at 5 in the morning, just a handful of bleary-eyed business travelers and cleaning crews preparing for the day ahead. I sat at my gate drinking terrible coffee, watching the sky slowly lighten beyond the windows, thinking about the life I'd built so carefully over decades. Dorian and I had been high school sweethearts in Boulder, had built his architecture firm from nothing, had weathered his father's business collapse and my mother's long illness. We'd never had children, my choice, one I'd sometimes regretted but never enough to change my mind, but we had each other, or so I'd believed. My phone buzzed with a text from Dorian at 5:47, "Sorry about last night. False alarm on the noise." I fell asleep on the couch watching TV. "When are you landing Thursday? I'll pick you up. Love you." The casualness of it, the easy lie, made something cold and hard settle in my chest where warmth used to live. He didn't even realize I could see through him now, that the spell of trust had been shattered completely by that silver handbag and his panicked exit from our video call. I texted back, "No worries. Landing Thursday afternoon. I'll get an Uber, don't want you to drive all that way. Love you too." The lies came easier than I expected, smooth and practiced, making me wonder if I'd learned deception from him or if I'd always had this capacity and never needed it before. I boarded my flight in a daze, found my seat by the window, and watched Denver disappear beneath clouds that looked like cotton wool hiding ugly truths. Somewhere over Kansas, staring at the endless flat earth below, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront Dorian alone. I wouldn't give him the chance to gaslight me, to make me doubt what I'd seen with my own eyes, to spin stories that would leave me confused and questioning my own sanity. Tess was right, I needed witnesses, I needed proof, I needed to walk into my house with enough support that the truth couldn't hide anymore. My marriage might be ending, but I would control how that ending happened. When the plane touched down in Colorado Springs at 8:43 that morning, I turned my phone off airplane mode and found 7 missed calls from Dorian. 7. In the 2 hours I'd been in the air, he tried reaching me 7 times, probably wondering why I wasn't responding to his text, probably getting nervous that his carefully constructed lies were about to collapse. I didn't call him back. Instead, I texted Tess, "I'm home. Coming to you now. It's time to find out the truth. Maribel is about to discover something shocking. What do you think she'll find at home? Comment your predictions. Hit that subscribe button." Teslin's house in Old Colorado City looked exactly like her, warm, colorful, unapologetically bold. She met me at the door before I could even knock, pulling me into a fierce hug that smelled like lavender and coffee and safety. "Come in, honey. Lowell's already here. We've been talking strategy." Her living room was a sanctuary of mismatched furniture and plants everywhere, sunlight streaming through windows that faced Pikes Peak in the distance. I'd spent countless hours here over the years, but today it felt different, like a war room instead of a refuge. Lowell Morehouse stood when I entered, his lawyer face firmly in place, sympathetic but practical, the exact energy I needed right now. He was 10 years older than Tess, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with a reputation for handling high-stakes divorces with ruthless efficiency. "Maribel, I'm sorry you're going through this. Tess filled me in on what you saw. Before we go any further, I need to ask, are you certain you want to know the truth? Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you know, everything changes." I sank into Tessa's oversized armchair, suddenly aware of how exhausted I was, not just from the sleepless night and early flight, but from years of perhaps willfully ignoring small inconsistencies that were now glaring in hindsight. "I already know, Lowell. I just need proof. I need to see it with my own eyes so he can't talk his way out of it, can't make me feel crazy for suspecting." My voice cracked slightly on the last word, and Tess immediately handed me a mug of coffee, her hand squeezing my shoulder with fierce solidarity. "Here's what I recommend," Lowell said, settling into professional mode as he pulled out a yellow legal pad covered in notes. "Don't call Dorian. Don't warn him you're home early. Go to the house when you know he'll be there, maybe lunchtime today, when he's not expecting you until tomorrow. Take Tess with you. Record everything on your phone. Don't engage emotionally, no matter what you find. Just document, observe, and leave. Then we file for divorce with evidence he can't dispute." The plan made sense, cold and clinical, and exactly what my shattered heart needed: structure, purpose, control in a situation spinning wildly out of my grasp. But something in me rebelled against the passive observer role, against sneaking into my own home like a detective. "No," I said slowly, an idea forming even as I spoke. "I want to walk in there expecting me. I want him to sweat, to wonder if I know. I'll text him now, tell him I cut my trip short because I missed him. See what he does with a few hours' warning." Tess and Lowell exchanged glances, and I saw the moment they recognized something in me, a steel I didn't even know I possessed until this moment. "You want to give him rope to hang himself with," Lowell said carefully. "Let him scramble to hide evidence, maybe make mistakes in the panic. It's risky, Maribel. He might clean everything up, and then you have nothing but a suspicious handbag that could theoretically be explained away." His lawyer brain was already running through scenarios, weighing risks against potential rewards. "But if he does clean up, that tells me something too," I countered, my mind suddenly sharp despite the exhaustion and heartbreak. "It tells me he knows he has something to hide. And people who are rushing to cover their tracks make mistakes. Maybe whoever that handbag belongs to won't be able to leave in time. Maybe there will be other evidence he overlooks. Maybe," I stopped, my throat tight. "Maybe I need him to know I'm coming so I can see if he even tries to do the right thing, to tell me the truth before I walk through that door." Tess sat down on the arm of my chair, her presence solid and unwavering. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. We both are. But Maribel, honey, you need to prepare yourself for what you might find. This might not be a recent thing. This might be deeper and longer than one woman with a silver handbag. Are you ready for that? Her words hit like physical blows, but I needed to hear them, needed to stop hiding from possibilities I'd been avoiding since that video call last night. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady now with purpose. I typed carefully, "Dorian, I cut the conference short. Missing you too much. I'll be home around 1. Can't wait to see you. Love, M." I showed the message to Lowell and Tess before sending. 3.5 hours. That's how long he has to decide who he is, a man who comes clean or a man who hides. Either way, I'll know exactly who I've been married to all these years. The message delivered with a soft whoosh. Somewhere across town, in the house we'd renovated together 5 years ago, in the bedroom where we'd made love and made plans and made promises, Dorian's phone was probably buzzing right now. I imagined his face when he read it, panic or relief, guilt or calculation. Whatever happened next, whatever truth waited for me at home, I would face it with my eyes wide open and my best friend at my side. The old Maribel might have called first, might have given him more warning, might have hoped for the best. But that Maribel died last night at 11:47, the moment she saw that silver handbag where she should have been sleeping. Dorian has 3 hours to come clean, or dig himself deeper. What would you do in Maribel's shoes? Comment below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. We sat in Tessa's living room watching the clock like it was a bomb ticking down. 12:17 became 12:31 became 12:48, each minute stretching impossibly long while simultaneously racing toward the confrontation I both dreaded and needed. My phone sat on the coffee table between us, silent. Dorian hadn't responded to my text, and that silence spoke volumes. He was scrambling, planning, deciding what version of himself to present when I walked through our door. The coffee had gone cold in my cup, untouched for the past hour while my stomach churned with anxiety and anger in equal measure. You should eat something, Tess suggested gently, but food was impossible right now. My body felt like it belonged to someone else, operating on autopilot while my mind spun through scenarios I'd never imagined having to consider. Would I find him alone, the house scrubbed clean of evidence, ready with explanations that would make me sound paranoid for suspecting? Or would I find her there, whoever she was, the owner of that silver handbag who'd been sleeping on my side of the bed while I was away building a career I'd sacrificed so much for? Lowell had been on his laptop for the past hour, preparing preliminary divorce documents just in case. Colorado is a no-fault divorce state, he explained, his voice professionally neutral but his eyes kind. But documentation of infidelity can affect asset division and spousal support negotiations. If you can get him to admit it, record it. If you see evidence, photograph it. Don't touch anything, don't destroy anything, just document. Your phone will be your best weapon today, Maribel. He slid a business card across the table. My private investigator. If you need more proof after today, call him. Sometimes these things run deeper than one affair. At 12:57, I stood up. My legs felt shaky but held me upright as I smoothed down my conference blouse and checked my reflection in Tessa's hallway mirror. I looked like exactly what I was, a 53-year-old woman who'd built a successful career in pharmaceutical sales, who'd maintained her figure and her style, who'd believed she had a solid marriage because she'd worked so damn hard to keep it solid. My dark hair was pulled back in a professional bun, my makeup still intact from this morning's flight. I looked capable and put together, and I clung to that appearance like armor. Ready? Tess asked, grabbing her keys. She'd insisted on driving, and I was grateful not to have to navigate while my entire world was potentially about to shatter. The drive from her house to mine took 17 minutes through familiar streets, past the coffee shop where Dorian and I had Sunday breakfast, past the park where we'd scattered his mother's ashes, past the grocery store where we bought organic vegetables every Tuesday evening. Every landmark felt like a memorial to a marriage that might already be dead. I just hadn't received the official notification yet. My house sat on a quiet street in Briargate, a lovely neighborhood of mature trees and well-maintained homes where everyone knew everyone's business. Dorian's Mercedes was in the driveway, along with, my breath caught, a red BMW I didn't recognize. So he hadn't sent her away. Relief and devastation hit me simultaneously. Relief because I'd have proof, devastation because this meant it was real, undeniable, happening right now while neighbors probably watched from behind their curtains, already knowing what I was just discovering. That car's been registered to a Naoma Ashford for 3 years, Lowell's text came through. He'd run the plates I'd texted him a photo of. Age 29, works as an interior designer at Hartmann and Associates downtown. 29. 24 years younger than me. The math felt like a knife between my ribs. Dorian was 56, old enough to be her father. The cliché of it was almost funny, except nothing about this moment was remotely humorous. Tess touched my arm gently. You can still leave. We can hire the investigator, get proof without you having to see it firsthand. Maribel, you don't have to do this to yourself. But I was already opening the car door, already walking up the brick pathway I'd helped design, already pulling out my key to the front door I'd painted coral last spring. This was my house, my life, my marriage. Whatever was happening inside, I had every right to face it head-on instead of hiding from it like it wasn't real. I turned the key slowly, pushing the door open into the foyer where sunlight streamed through the windows I'd decorated with sheer white curtains. Everything looked exactly the same, the antique console table, the framed photos of our travels, the fresh flowers Dorian always kept there because he knew I loved coming home to beauty. Except nothing was the same, because I could hear voices upstairs. Laughing. A woman's voice, young and bright, mixed with Dorian's deeper tone in a way that suggested intimacy, comfort, the kind of easy rapport that comes from time spent together. My heart hammered against my ribs as Tess stepped in behind me, her phone already recording like Lowell had instructed. This was it, the moment where everything changed, where the truth could no longer hide behind texts and explanations and my own desperate hope that I was wrong. I started up the stairs toward our bedroom, each step feeling like walking toward my own execution. Maribel is about to walk into her bedroom. What will she find? Drop your predictions in the comments. Subscribe now. The stairs creaked under my feet, the same familiar sound I'd heard 10,000 times, but today it felt like a countdown to detonation. My hand gripped the banister so hard my knuckles went white, and behind me I could feel Tessa's presence like a shield, her phone's camera pointed forward to capture whatever horror waited at the top. The voices grew clearer with each step, Dorian's laugh, rich and genuine in a way I hadn't heard directed at me in months, maybe years. And her voice, lilting and youthful, saying something about fabric swatches and accent walls and natural light. The bedroom door was half open, and through the gap I could see movement. I pushed it wider, my whole body braced for impact, and there they were. Dorian stood by our dresser wearing jeans and the Henley shirt I'd bought him for his birthday, his reading glasses perched on his nose. And sitting cross-legged on my side of the bed, our bed, was a young woman with honey blonde hair and perfect skin, wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater, papers and fabric samples spread around her like she belonged there. Like she'd been there many times before. They both looked up when I entered, and I watched in slow motion as Dorian's face transformed. First confusion, who was opening the door, then recognition, oh God, Maribel, then pure, undiluted panic that confirmed everything I'd suspected and feared. The woman's expression was different, surprise shifting quickly to understanding as she looked between Dorian and me, her eyes widening as pieces clearly fell into place. Oh, she said simply, her voice small now instead of bright. You're the wife. I'm the wife, I confirmed, my voice eerily calm considering the hurricane of emotions tearing through my chest. And you're Naoma Ashford, interior designer, age 29, owner of the red BMW parked in my driveway. I watched her face pale at the information, watched her realize this wasn't a spontaneous discovery but something I'd come prepared for. The same Naoma whose silver handbag I saw on my side of the bed during a video call last night, which is why I cut my business trip short to come home and find you still here. Each word felt like a nail I was hammering into the coffin of my marriage. Dorian finally found his voice, stepping forward with his hands raised like he was approaching a dangerous animal. Maribel, this isn't what it looks like. Naoma is helping me redesign the house as a surprise for you. For our anniversary next month. I was going to, but I cut him off with a harsh laugh that didn't sound like anything I'd ever produced before, bitter and sharp as broken glass. His face crumbled at that sound, at the realization that his explanation had landed dead in the water before it even fully formed. Don't, I said sharply, my hand coming up to stop his words. Don't you dare insult my intelligence by pretending this is about interior design. I've worked in sales for 25 years, Dorian. I know what lying looks like, sounds like, feels like. And you forget, I saw that video call. I saw the panic on your face. I saw you run away rather than explain. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking slightly as I opened the photo I'd screenshotted last night at 11:47. This is what innocent looks like when someone's wife notices something unexpected on camera. This is what honest looks like. Naoma stood up from the bed, gathering her papers with jerky, nervous movements. I should go. This is between you two. Dorian, but I stopped her with a look, my attention shifting to this woman who was young enough to be my daughter, who'd been intimate enough with my husband to be sitting on my bed at 1 p.m. on a Tuesday like it was perfectly normal. How long? I asked her directly, ignoring Dorian's sharp intake of breath. How long have you been sleeping with my husband? Maribel, stop, Dorian commanded, his voice taking on an edge I recognized from business negotiations, trying to regain control of a situation spiraling away from him. But Tess moved slightly forward at my shoulder, her presence reminding him this wasn't a private conversation anymore, that whatever happened now had witnesses who wouldn't let him bully or manipulate his way out. Naoma looked between us, trapped in clearly calculating her options, her youth and inexperience showing in the tears gathering in her eyes. 8 months, she whispered finally, and the number hit me like a physical blow. Not weeks or days. 8 months. 2/3 of a year. While I'd been traveling for work, missing conferences because he said he needed me home, celebrating our 27th anniversary with the diamond bracelet he'd given me in bed afterward, all of it happening while he maintained a parallel life with this woman young enough to be his daughter. The room tilted slightly, and I felt Tessa's hand steady on my elbow. Did you know about me? I asked Naoma, my voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake inside my chest. Did you know he was married when this started? She nodded miserably, tears spilling over now, mascara starting to run down her cheeks. He said you were separated. That you'd grown apart, that the divorce was just a matter of paperwork. He showed me the guest room downstairs, said that's where you slept when you were home. I believed, her voice broke, and part of me wanted to feel sorry for her, but the larger part was too busy trying to keep myself from flying apart at the seams. I turned back to Dorian, who stood frozen by the dresser, his face ashen, his carefully constructed lies crumbling around him like ancient walls finally giving way. Get out, I said quietly. Both of you. Out of my bedroom, out of my house, out of my life. Now. My voice rose on the last word, 28 years of trust and partnership and sacrifice finally breaking through the dam of shock. You have 30 minutes to gather your things, Dorian, and then I'm changing the locks. And Naoma, take your samples and your silver handbag in your youth, and learn something from this, a man who lies to his wife will lie to you too. You're not special. You're just next. 8 months. Can you believe this betrayal? What should Maribel do next? Comment below and smash that like button. Subscribe for chapter. Naoma fled first, grabbing her leather portfolio and practically running down the stairs, her footsteps frantic echoes through the house I thought was my sanctuary. I heard the front door slam, then the BMW's engine roaring to life with unnecessary aggression, tires squealing slightly as she pulled away from the scene of her own complicity in my marriage's destruction. Dorian stood paralyzed by the dresser, his hands hanging useless at his sides, his mouth opening and closing like he was searching for words that might undo what had just been revealed. "Maribel, please," he finally managed, his voice breaking on my name. "Can we just talk about this? 28 years of marriage, doesn't that count for something? Doesn't that earn me a chance to explain?" He took a step toward me, but Tess shifted protectively closer, her phone still recording every word, every expression, capturing his desperation for the divorce proceedings Lowell was probably already drafting downtown. The lawyer in his office with documents that would legally end what had emotionally died 8 months ago, or maybe longer, maybe years of slow erosion I'd been too busy or too trusting to notice. "Explain what, exactly?" I asked, my voice cold and precise, channeling every ounce of professional composure I'd honed selling pharmaceuticals to skeptical doctors for decades. "Explain how you've been sleeping with a woman young enough to be our daughter if we'd had children? Explain how you looked me in the eye every single morning for 8 months while maintaining an entire secret relationship? Explain how you spent our 27th anniversary making love to me, giving me a diamond bracelet, while you were already deep into an affair with someone else?" Each question landed like a slap, and I watched him flinch with each one. He sank onto the edge of the bed, our bed, where we'd built a life together, where we'd comforted each other through his father's death and my mother's cancer, where we'd made plans and promises that apparently meant nothing when faced with a 29-year-old interior designer with perfect skin. "It wasn't about you," he said desperately, and I actually laughed, a harsh, broken sound that made Tessa's hand tighten on my shoulder. "God, Maribel, you're beautiful and successful and everything any man could want. It was about me, about feeling old, about being a cliché," I finished for him, cutting through his self-serving explanation like a surgeon's blade. "About being a middle-aged man who needed to prove he could still attract someone young to feel alive. About being selfish enough to destroy 28 years of partnership for an ego boost wrapped in yoga pants." I moved to the closet, yanking his suitcases from the top shelf with more force than necessary, throwing them onto the bed between us. "You have 23 minutes left. Start packing, Dorian. Take your clothes, your toiletries, whatever you need for immediate survival. Everything else, you can negotiate through lawyers." "Where am I supposed to go?" he asked, and the sheer entitlement in that question, that he expected me to solve the logistics of his exile after what he'd done, made my blood boil. "Figure it out. You're a grown man with a mistress who apparently believed you were separated. Maybe she has space for you now that the truth is out. Or maybe one of your friends can take you in, though I'm guessing once word gets around about this, your social circle might be less accommodating than you'd hope." Colorado Springs was a relatively small community in some ways, and infidelity was the kind of scandal that traveled fast through certain circles. He began mechanically pulling clothes from drawers, stuffing them into the suitcase without folding, his movements jerky and uncoordinated like a puppet with tangled strings. Tess stayed near the door, a silent guardian with her phone documenting everything, while I stood by the window watching the street below. Mrs. Brennan across the way was definitely watching from behind her lace curtains, probably already texting the neighborhood group chat. By tonight, everyone within a 3-block radius would know that the Ashbys' marriage had imploded spectacularly on a Tuesday afternoon. "I never wanted to hurt you," Dorian said softly, pausing in his packing to look at me with eyes that might have melted my anger if this were yesterday, if I were still the woman who trusted him. "I love you, Maribel. I never stopped loving you. It was just, God, I don't even know how to explain it. She made me feel young again. Alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't about replacing you, it was about recapturing something I'd lost." I turned from the window to face him fully, and I could see him recoil slightly from whatever he saw in my expression. "You know what makes me feel alive, Dorian? Building a career from scratch. Closing deals worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Traveling the country representing pharmaceutical innovations that save lives. Learning new things, meeting new people, constantly growing and evolving. You could have done those things too. You could have found ways to feel young and alive that didn't involve betraying your wife with someone young enough to be your daughter. But that would have required actual effort, actual self-reflection, actual growth. You took the easy, selfish, destructive path instead. He zipped the suitcase with shaking hands, his face crumpling as reality apparently finally crashed through his walls of denial and self-justification. What happens now? Can I call you? Can we try counseling? Maribel, please, 28 years can't just end like this. We built a whole life together. The business, this house, our friends, our plans for retirement. You can't just throw all of that away because I made one mistake. One mistake. As if 8 months of deliberate, sustained betrayal could be minimized into a single error in judgment. I'm not throwing it away, I said quietly, picking up his car keys from the dresser and pressing them into his hand. You already did that. You threw it away every time you touched her, every time you lied to me about where you were or who you were with, every time you looked me in the eye and said you loved me while maintaining a secret life I knew nothing about. I'm just acknowledging reality. And no, you can't call me. Any communication goes through Lowell Morehouse, he's my attorney. You should probably get one too. Dorian stood there holding his suitcase and keys, looking suddenly old and lost in a way that might have broken my heart yesterday. But today I saw him clearly, a man who'd chosen his own comfort over our partnership, who'd risked everything we'd built for temporary validation, who'd lied so smoothly I'd never suspected until I literally saw evidence with my own eyes. I'm sorry, he whispered, and I believed he was sorry he'd been caught, sorry his comfortable dual life had collapsed, sorry he'd have to face consequences. But sorry enough to have stopped before it started? Sorry enough to have been honest? No. Your 30 minutes are up, I said, walking to the bedroom door and holding it open in clear dismissal. Tess and I will walk you out. Tomorrow I'm changing the locks, canceling the joint credit cards, and consulting with Lowell about asset division. You've taken enough from me, Dorian. You don't get to take one more second of my time or one more tear from my eyes. You're done here. He walked past me carrying his hastily packed bag, his shoulders slumped in defeat, and I felt nothing but relief that he was finally leaving, that the lies could stop, that I could begin grieving what I'd lost instead of pretending everything was fine. Speech balloon Maribel just kicked him out. Would you have given him a second chance or done the same thing? Tell us in the comments. Hit like and subscribe. I stood at the front door watching Dorian's Mercedes disappear down the street, his taillights blinking like dying embers before vanishing around the corner. The finality hit me then, not the divorce or legal proceedings to come, but the simple fact that after 28 years of partnership, he could drive away in 30 minutes with everything that apparently mattered to him fitting in a single suitcase. The door closed with a soft click sounding impossibly loud in sudden silence, and my legs simply gave out. Tess caught me before I hit the floor, her strong arms wrapping around me as the first sob finally broke free from somewhere deep in my chest. I've got you, she whispered, easing us both down to sit on the foyer floor. Let it out, honey. You're allowed to fall apart now. The sobs came in waves, ugly and raw and liberating. I cried for the marriage I'd thought I had, for the man I'd believed Dorian was, for retirement plans that would never happen now. I cried for my 53-year-old self replaced by a 29-year-old upgrade, for every time I'd traveled for work believing he was home alone missing me when he was actually entertaining her. I cried for the diamond bracelet upstairs, purchased with what, guilt money? Time became elastic, it might have been 10 minutes or an hour before tears finally slowed, my body exhausted from emotional purging. Tess hadn't moved, hadn't spoken beyond soft reassurances, just held me like she'd done through my mother's death, through my miscarriage 15 years ago, through every major crisis of our 3-decade friendship. Finally, I pulled back, wiping my face with my sleeves like a child. What do I do now? Now? Tess stood, pulling me up with her. Now we call Lowell and tell him everything that happened. Then we change the locks tonight. I know a 24-hour locksmith. Then we open wine, order takeout, and you sleep in the guest room because you're not ready to face that bedroom yet. Tomorrow we start rebuilding. But tonight, we just survive. Her practicality was exactly what I needed: clear steps, immediate actions. The locksmith arrived at 7:30, a grizzled man named Oswin who worked efficiently without asking questions. The sound of new locks clicking into place felt like reclaiming territory, like drawing a line in the sand saying this house, this life, was mine now. Dorian no longer had access, no longer had keys, no longer had the right to walk through these doors without my explicit permission. The symbolism was almost as satisfying as practical security. Speech balloon: the locks are changed and Maribel is free. Comment your thoughts. Subscribe. Morning came too early, gray October light filtering through unfamiliar windows. For a confused moment I didn't remember where I was, and then it all crashed back: the video call, the silver handbag, Naoma on my bed, Dorian's pathetic explanations, the new locks. I reached for my phone and found 17 missed calls from Dorian, 12 text messages starting apologetic and devolving into angry demands that I let him back into his house. Tess was already making coffee when I emerged, still wearing yesterday's clothes because I couldn't bring myself to go upstairs for fresh ones. Lowell called, she said, pouring me a cup in my favorite mug, the one Dorian had given me from our Napa Valley trip 6 years ago, back when I still believed our marriage was real. Papers are ready. He's coming at 10, and he's arranged for a process server to deliver Dorian's copy to the architecture firm at 11:30. The vindictiveness of the timing should have bothered me, but instead I felt grim satisfaction imagining Dorian's face when he was served divorce papers in front of colleagues and clients. Let him feel a fraction of the humiliation I'd experienced finding him with his mistress in our bedroom. Let his professional reputation take a hit the way my sense of self-worth had been systematically demolished over 8 months of sustained lies. My phone rang, Dorian's name flashing for the 18th time. I answered on speaker so Tess could hear, my voice flat and emotionless. "What do you want, Dorian?" His relief was audible, pathetic. "Thank God, Maribel. I've been trying to reach you all night. I'm at the Marriott downtown, and I need back into the house. I left my laptop, my work files, my medications. You can't just lock me out. Your attorney can contact my attorney to arrange supervised property retrieval," I interrupted, the words Lowell had coached coming out smooth and practiced. "I'm not obligated to give you access to the marital home, especially given the circumstances. If you have immediate medical needs, visit a pharmacy. If you have work needs, you should have thought of that before spending 8 months having an affair in the bed I helped pay for. Maribel, please, can we just talk like adults? Like two people who loved each other for almost 3 decades? His voice cracked with what sounded like genuine emotion, but I'd learned yesterday that Dorian was an excellent actor. "We are talking like adults," I responded. "Adults who are getting divorced. You'll be served papers this morning. My attorney's name is Lowell Morehouse. Have your attorney contact him. Goodbye, Dorian." I hung up before he could respond, hands shaking with adrenaline. Speech balloon: divorce papers are being served. What happens next? Comment below. Hit like and subscribe. Lowell arrived at 10 sharp, professional and prepared with a leather briefcase full of documents. He spread them across my dining room table: petition for dissolution of marriage, temporary orders regarding property access and financial accounts, comprehensive financial affidavits I'd need to complete. The legal language transformed 28 years of partnership into cold clauses about asset division and debt allocation. It was brutal and necessary and somehow cleansing. "I need you to make lists," he instructed, pulling out additional forms. Everything you paid for or contributed to during the marriage. Every loan you covered, every business expense you funded, every home improvement your income financed. Colorado is an equitable distribution state, which means fair but not necessarily equal. Given your financial contributions and his infidelity, we have strong grounds to argue you should retain the majority of marital assets. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of paperwork and painful inventory taking. How much had I contributed to Dorian's architecture firm over the years? At least $200,000 in direct loans and business expense coverage. How much had I paid toward the house? Nearly 60% of the down payment and mortgage payments, my pharmaceutical sales income covering the gaps when his firm wasn't profitable. The numbers painted a clear picture. What about retirement accounts? Lowell asked, and I pulled up our financial statements. We had separate 401(k)s through our respective employers, but I also funded a substantial joint investment account meant for early retirement travel, another dream that died yesterday afternoon. The joint account has about $380,000, I said, my voice catching slightly. We were supposed to retire at 60 and spend a year traveling through Europe. Tess squeezed my shoulder as Lowell made notes. That account should be split equitably, but we'll argue for 60-40 in your favor given your disproportionate contributions throughout the marriage. He looked up, expression sympathetic but professional. I need to ask difficult questions now, Maribel. How long do you believe the affair has been going on? Naoma said 8 months, but is there any indication it could be longer or that there were others before her? I don't know, I admitted, and the uncertainty felt like standing on ground that kept shifting beneath my feet. 8 months is what she claimed, and I want to believe it, but yesterday I thought I was in a faithful marriage, so clearly my judgment is compromised. Lowell nodded, unsurprised. I'm going to recommend my investigator run a more comprehensive check, credit card statements, phone records, travel patterns. Not because we need it for the divorce itself, but because you deserve to know the full truth. Speech balloon Maribel is discovering everything. What do you think the investigator will find? Comment your theories. 3 months later, I sat in my newly redecorated living room, the one I designed myself without any help from interior designers who slept with married men. The divorce had been finalized 2 weeks ago. Lowell had negotiated brilliantly, and I'd walked away with the house, 70% of our joint investments, and half of Dorian's architecture firm equity. The investigator had found evidence of 2 previous affairs, both short-lived, both carefully hidden. Apparently, Naoma had been the longest and most serious. Dorian had tried repeatedly to reconcile during the proceedings, sending flowers and apology letters that I'd forwarded directly to Lowell without reading. The investigator's report had eliminated any lingering doubts about my decision. This wasn't a man who'd made one mistake, this was a pattern of behavior, a fundamental character flaw I'd been too trusting or too busy to notice. The grief had been intense, but so had the freedom that came with finally knowing the truth. Tess knocked on my door at 7, carrying wine and Thai food from our favorite restaurant. How does it feel? She asked, settling onto my new couch, one I'd chosen myself, in colors Dorian had always vetoed. Being officially single after 28 years? I considered the question seriously. It feels terrifying and liberating in equal measure. Like standing at the edge of a cliff, not sure if I'm about to fall or fly. We ate and talked late into the evening, making plans for the future I was building alone now. I'd been promoted at work, my dedication over the years finally recognized with a regional management position. I'd started taking Italian lessons online, planning a solo trip to Tuscany in the spring, that European retirement trip transformed into something just for me. I'd joined a book club and a hiking group, slowly building a social life independent of the couple circle Dorian and I had inhabited. You know what I realized? I said as Tess prepared to leave around 10. For years, I'd been so focused on being a good wife, on supporting Dorian's dreams, on maintaining our marriage, that I'd forgotten to ask what I wanted. who I was outside of being his partner. This divorce, as much as it hurt, it gave me permission to figure that out. To build a life that's mine, based on my interests and dreams. Tess hugged me at the door, her eyes suspiciously bright. I'm proud of you, Maribel. You took the worst thing that could have happened and turned it into a new beginning. That takes courage most people don't have. And for what it's worth, I think the best version of you is still ahead. The woman you're becoming is stronger, clearer, and more authentic than ever before. Speech balloon Maribel survived and thrived. What's your biggest takeaway from her story? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for following this journey. Hit subscribe for more inspiring stories. Gemstone Sparkles.